In my first draft of this video, I was struggling to come up with a lot of jokes related to this game, but that's okay, because Sonic Unleashed is already kind of a joke. Aside from the big God of War shaped elephant in the room, it is a game I disagree with basically every artistic decision in.
Who are you?
Sonic fans will kinda kill you for saying that, and I know better than to interact with the fans of things, but if you've played any of the games that this game is imitating, then you would probably realize that this game is quite bad at doing those things. If you've played any decent action games like Devil May Cry, God of War, Ninja Gaiden, or even something for real gamers like Nightmare Before Christmas Oogie's Revenge, then I don't really need to explain to you why the beat-em-up part of this game is not a very good game. Other games have a real crunch to them, and in Sonic Unleashed it feels like you are hitting wet balloons against your chest. There are puzzles that you have already solved upon entering the room, and this game's idea of mechanics otherwise are carrying things around or pushing levers. These mechanics are more akin to working at an Amazon fulfillment center rather than playing a video game, and if you find that fun, I can't stop you, but I will say you may as well make some cash rather than sit here and listen to me put a tinfoil hat on. But the UI and particle effects in this game are very similar to the aforementioned God of War. The same QTE finishers are present in the game, and it's no coincidence that Sonic the Werehog stretches out his arms to fight in a similar fashion to Kratos with his blades. Despite the God of War influence, the game is very G-rated. Big fucking surprise. The visuals and character designs feel very Pixar-esque, while older Sonic games leaned more on realistic characters. I suppose taking a cartoonish approach to character design is better than the more realistic characters from earlier games, but it still feels like there has been a slight mismatch in art styles. The older Sonic games also leaned more on based, cringe, hype, and aura anime storytelling, but the tone in Sonic Unleashed is more obviously cartoonish and whimsical than before. I suppose Sega thought that Sonic hanging out with anime girls was gay, not that there's anything wrong with that. So they instead replaced them with an annoying cartoon dog that generates Hanna-Barbera sound effects.
If he got kidnapped that long ago, he's gotta be real hungry by now. And if I was that hungry, I don't know how long I would last. I'd rather be dead.
I'm sure Eggman is feeding him. Even he's not that cruel.
This is no one's favorite Sonic character, and he somehow manages to generate negative aura. This game doesn't even feature Shadow the Hedgehog,
Sonic,
which would regenerate some of the game's aura, but due to the tone of this game, I have very little confidence he wouldn't be made to just fall over and fart, so perhaps it is best that he was spared.
Maria, this is what you wanted, right? This is my promise I made to you.
Right then, first things first. It's about time someone taught the chef here how to make a proper sandwich.
Shadow the Hedgehog is pretty sick, though. He was the best part of that dog shit movie, which is another statement I am making to be provocative on purpose. Shadow is not the only exclusion, however. This game features very few Sonic characters in it. Only Tails and Amy. Tails is seemingly made redundant by this terrible old man character who will not stop talking about sandwiches and farting, who delivers the game's exposition. Amy is only here for this one scene where she doesn't recognize Sonic, and he gets all bummed out, dude, but the story doesn't really expand on this. There isn't really, like, a theme to the story, aside from making a point about how Sonic is so awesome and cool that he can't get corrupted by becoming a werewolf.
I haven't done anything, Sonic.
And while I am not a professional writer like the geniuses in Hollywood, my thought on this is that a character deliberately contrived to not have anything be able to happen to them is not a good character to put in a story. If this game challenged Sonic's outlook on life as much as it did my patience with these collectibles that are required to progress, perhaps I would give it some more points, but the only other thing this story has to lean on is this cartoon dog that sounds like a pedophile imitating a children's mascot trying to lure children.
That's some story.
Sonic suddenly pivoting to trying to be like a Disney Pixar film and foregoing almost any anime influence feels incredibly lame. and while I am not opposed to extracting the cringe, you kind of need to put something in its place instead of a new brand of cringe. It's just kind of forgettable. Aside from the fact that anime cringe won the cultural war anyway by virtue of anime blowing up pretty significantly soon after this game was released, what we are left with is a boring, insubstantial story and presentation about absolutely nothing that tries its best to be as inoffensive as possible towards American audiences, while also landing the 1 in a million 360 trick shot of somehow not landing any of the obvious emotional beats of any of the products this game is imitating would hit. I would say that a better story is crafted by the game's atmosphere than any of the cutscenes. Well, you would assume by the initial premise of the game it would be more pressing, but Sonic Unleashed is fashioned as a relaxed tour across the world, so it's more about what you see and the people you meet. You get to go to bizarre parodies of real-world cultures. You go to Antarctica and meet the Inuit people, and they live in igloos. The UK, France, Germany, and Italy have all been mashed into one and called Spaghetti Land. The Africans live in mud huts, apparently, despite it being the capital of the entire continent. I'll let you decide whether or not it is most likely racist. It is most likely racist. But I suppose that is one thing carried over from Disney that they managed to nail. Bizarrely, though, the immersive elements feel more like accessories to the experience rather than a core part of it. There are a ton of unique characters in this game, but their existence does not amount to much aside from various boring side quests where you either enter an insubstantial challenge level or walk around the hub to talk to them again. This makes the game end up feeling like two arcade games that are frequently interrupted by an unimpressive adventure game about cultural stereotypes that is played entirely straight. I suppose if you have not played that many games with immersive worlds, or literally cannot tell the difference between something good and bad, then a lot of the stuff in this game might seem like a novelty. And I guess I can't prove it's objectively shit, but I can't help but think about all the games I've played with great characters and settings and how this game's diet is lacking in them immensely. It is often praised as one of the better-looking Sonic games, but even though the graphical fidelity is good enough to lag your Xbox 360 and has all these locations based on real-world places, the game doesn't really do a lot with these. They just kind of look like bland interpretations of real-world places, without much of a cartoony or Sonic-esque flair. There are also not nearly enough unique mechanics in the game, and the level design feels almost entirely homogenized no matter where you are. While I will admit that I am something of a Sonic fanboy boomer.
How all you mounted Morans think this is the best game? I mean, seriously, what the fuck?
And more of a fan of the surreal retro sci-fi fantasy themes of older Sonic games. At least games like Sonic Adventure 2 use the unique geography of San Francisco to create fresh-feeling level design. The interpretation of science fiction in this game is also rather bland, and elements like loops are just shoehorned in to try and make it more exciting, and unfortunately these things are not very exciting when the game plays itself. Good arcade-style games offer a lot more depth than they do on the surface, because of smart design that allows for a lot of fast-paced decision-making and optimization, but you are making very few choices in Sonic Unleashed. And like every 3D Sonic game, it still just kind of amounts to mashing the homing attack chains, rail grinding, and running down hallways, but instead this time it plays itself even more thanks to the boost mechanic. Everything just falls over and dies, and the game operates at a binary 2 genders, boosting and not boosting, so there really isn't much to get good at, aside from memorizing the levels. It is like if a racing game did not have any nuanced mechanics around speed or acceleration, and you just went slow and there was a button that just made you fast. This game attempts to mix things up with 2D platforming segments in a Chris Bandicoot-esque fashion, but I think this just exposes how little there is to the game's mechanics compared to more thought-out platformers. Sonic Unleashed is a game that I get the impression is made to appease the fantasy of kids who imagine Sonic running alongside them in the car. The setting is based on the real world, and Sonic runs really fast through these environments, until he doesn't. And while Sonic But Real does apparently have some kind of appeal, this game's pacing feels a little bit too close to home, and I unfortunately cannot get behind Sonic imitating the real-life feeling of waiting in line at the DMV by being a 15-hour slog instead of something more brisk and fun. If you happen to like Sonic Unleashed, that's perfectly fine, But if you haven't already, I would recommend broadening your horizons with perhaps some adventure games or RPGs. So perhaps you can experience some immersive settings in video games while comparing them to Sonic Unleashed and what it does. Or rather, doesn't do, in my opinion.
Excellent. Bye.